Hi, I'm Julieanna Hever, and this is the What Would Julieanna Do Q&A. Today's question is, does everyone have to avoid gluten? This is one of the most popular trends right now. In fact, gluten-free, the sales are estimated to reach about $5 billion with a B dollars by 2015, and there are all sorts of health claims attached to going gluten-free. However, essentially only 3 populations need to avoid gluten. People that have celiac disease, those with a gluten allergy, and finally those that are gluten intolerant. What's the difference? Celiac disease is an autoimmune response to the protein gluten. So when someone who has celiac disease takes in gluten, they have an inflammatory response that leads to atrophy of the villi in the small intestines. This also makes it difficult to absorb nutrients. So the symptoms vary widely. Like some people can look very, very sick and be dealing with a lot of issues versus someone that could be walking around for years without knowing that they have celiac disease. Fortunately now you can do a blood test and determine whether or not you do indeed have celiac disease. It's become so prevalent now that it's estimated to be about 1 in 100 people. 3 million Americans now have celiac disease. And the long-term consequences are scary too. There's higher risk for certain cancers and ulcers. So if you suspect this is something you should see your physician about. Gluten allergy is slightly different. Now the symptoms can be the same, although again, symptoms vary tremendously between person to person. But the difference is, even though you may have symptoms and you may test positive on these immunoglobulin E assays, you still don't have that risk for the atrophy of the gut and for the long-term consequences as do celiac disease. And then there's the gluten intolerances. This is becoming more and more popular and more common now. So now they're estimating that it's like 1 in 56 have a gluten intolerance. Now again, this is really hard to diagnose because you may cut out gluten and several other things and not be able to pinpoint it. The best thing to do is a test where you eliminate all potentially allergic foods, and then it's called an elimination diet, and then you kind of try to figure out if it is indeed gluten. So what is gluten? Gluten is a group of different proteins that are found primarily in wheat and all of its myriad derivatives, and rye and barley, and sometimes oats get cross-contaminated with gluten. So it's kind of tough to avoid because of its ubiquitousness in our food supply, but it is possible, especially now. In 2006, there was the law that was passed called the Food Allergen Labeling and Consumer Protection Act. And this is what that law was that made food labels contain the warning that wheat and other allergens are in the product. So it's much easier. You don't have to play detective as much as we used to have to do. So essentially, those are the people that need to avoid gluten. However, the question, the billion-dollar question is, why do so many people say, oh, I feel so much better when I don't eat gluten? Well, the reason for that is, if they don't have an intolerance, allergy, or celiac disease, is because they're cutting out processed foods. Like I said, wheat is ubiquitous in the food supply. It is in so many products, but they're all processed foods. Cakes, cookies, granola bars, candy bars, that's where you're gonna find wheat products. So when you cut those processed foods out, of course you're gonna feel better, you're gonna lose weight, you're gonna beat the bloat. Those are the benefits of eating a whole food plant-based diet. If you are not allergic, intolerant, or have celiac disease, including foods like couscous and barley are wonderful assets to a whole food, health-promoting plant-based diet. If you have a question you'd like answered, or if you're interested in nutrition counseling, find me online at www.plantbaseddietitian.com, on Facebook as Plant Based Dietitian, or on Twitter as @PlantDietitian. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.